good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon what time of day you consume your media. Welcome to Run It Back. This is episode number 59. I'm your host, Menelik Fernandez, and thank you for joining. Uh, the premise of Run It Back remains the same. Basically, we take a game that has happened previously and we run it back, so to speak, where we talk about things that we did in preparation. We talk about matchups, we talk about scout, and we talk about in-game adjustments. And because we're, in the future, we're talking about it in hindsight. So hindsight is 2020, as they say. So we basically take on the premise of would we do the same thing again? Would we do something differently? Did we like the way that our team responded to what we gave them? So, as with previous episodes, this particular episode, we will have a guest joining us from the game in question. Today, I'm very happy to say we have our seventh G League coach joining the Run It Back series. We are taking on a game from February 22nd, 2021. It is the Erie Bayhawks versus the Delaware Bluecoats. And joining us today is the head coach of the Erie Bayhawks, Coach Ryan Pannone. I'm very, very excited about this one. Coach Pannone is an excellent contributor, clinician, speaker on the game of basketball. I've managed to have the good fortune to host a couple Zooms that he's been in through the Rising Coaches Network over this past year. And just, as I said, a tremendous sharer. So I'm very excited for this one. Coach Pannone, if you give me a second, I'm going to try my best to do you justice with a little bit of an introduction here. He is the head coach of the Erie Bayhawks, as I said, since 2019 of July. He spent 16 years as a consultant / player development coach at the Pro Training Center. He has worked with over 50 NBA players there. He is one of the co-creators of basketballhq.com, which is a resource for and by coaches. He spent 1 year as an assistant coach at Hapoel in Jerusalem. Two different times he was there. He spent 1 year at BC. Man, we just talked about it. I'm still going to mess it up. I'm sorry. Pravizda, which is in Slovakia. Spent 1 year with Heibisen in Germany. Assistant coach with Erie one time prior. An assistant coach with the Foshan Lions, which is in China. And then, of course, back home residentially, where he got his start, an assistant coach at Wallace State and a head coach at Oldsmar Christian School. So Ryan has seen much of the world and has a tremendous knowledge base to share with us. I'm very excited to have you here. Thanks for taking your time to do it. Welcome.
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much. So let's delve in. Before we talk a little bit specifically about this game, what I hope you could give us is a little bit of a rundown of this previous season of the G League. Obviously, a shortened season, operating sort of within a bubble constraint. How does that affect the time that you could spend on games, and what did the structure look like comparatively to what a full season would look like from your perspective?
We tried to keep it as close to normal as possible from a scouting and preparation standpoint, and how we prepared the video, how we prepared the scout, how we administer the scout and the video. The more difficult time was your time on the court. We had 15 games in 25 days.
Wow.
And during that time, it's a day in between games is oftentimes an off day. So you're trying to utilize everything that you can do between what would be hotel room walkthroughs and maybe walkthrough on the court, trying to make sure guys get rest or off their feet, but they also feel prepared as possible for the opponent that we're playing. So we did everything that we could to try to keep it as close to normal, but everything is for sure far more compact.
Right. So, I mean, moving from the overall season to the time frame between games and this particular matchup. So you played 2 days prior. You played against Memphis. You did win that game. Thank you for the correction on that from the notes that I sent you. When do you start this scout? And I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a compound question asker. I jam a couple questions together. Sort of take us through that process of what those 2 days look like. Like, how do you deliver it? Who's involved in the process? How, like everything that's in there, please.
So that night, after the game, and into the morning. So basically, when the players wake up, sometime between that night or when the players are in the morning, they're actually sent the scout to their phone. So that was what we talked about with our staff is I want immediately after the game that they have the scout, not just the video scout, but the written scout as well from personnel. And within the personnel, we tried to include the main sets run for each player. So once the Memphis game finished, that night or first thing in the morning, the players received the scout for the Delaware game. Within that scout is going to be video of what the players, obviously typical what their strengths are, but obviously what their weaknesses are, along with good defensive clips of exactly how we wanted to guard them. So if we wanted to take away a player's right-hand drive, we were going to show he's a good right-hand driver, and then we're going to have a clip showing really good defense to take away that right-hand drive. And so we want to try to give the players a visual of exactly how we want to guard them. Then within that is going to be the main sets that they run that player for that player. So that way they're stepping into when we actually come to as a team. They've watched the video on the personnel. They know their strengths, how we want to guard them, what the main sets are run for each player. And then as we meet as a team, as we prepare for Delaware, now we're going to start out quizzing them. So we're going to quiz them. Hey, what can you tell me about Rajon Tucker? What are the main sets for them? What are the main actions they like to get them? How are we looking to guard them? How are we trying to take it away? And then also trying to get them to have critical thinking of the main actions that we guard them. Well, how do we want to guard that action? And let them talk through and see, because obviously for the most part, as actions that are as similar as possible, especially in a confined environment, your systematic rules are extremely important as opposed to changing from game to game how you're going to defend different actions.
I love that, Coach.
Yeah. So that was our approach. That was what we did. Now, each of our coaching staff is assigned different teams in different games. So that coaching staff member is going to do the scout, prepare the scout. We had our associate head coach, TJ Saint, who's been in the NBA.
Former running back guest, actually. He's been on the show as well.
Yeah, so TJ is extremely high level. His role requirement as our associate head coach is to make sure I don't get fired. And if I'm doing something stupid, to tell me it's stupid. And fortunately, he's very, very, very high level. So that coach will meet with TJ. He handles a lot of our defense. They're then going to meet and go over exactly how we want to guard it, what the game plan will be. Then we will meet as a staff. At that point, that staff member has sent the offensive edit and the defensive edit to all of our coaches. So I don't like it when we get to a meeting and a coach doesn't know anything about the team because it's not their scout. Because what oftentimes happens is a player is going to ask, whether it's a coach that they work with individually or the coach have the best relationship. Oh yeah, what does Michael Frazier do again? And if that staff member doesn't know, you're losing credibility amongst your players. And once you begin to lose credibility, you're losing buy-in. And so their main offense and defense, what their systems are, is being sent to our whole staff. We're watching it. Now we will come in and meet as a staff. TJ and who's ever scouted will have already gotten together to go over what they think is the best way that we should guard it. Then we will discuss it all together as a staff. Everyone has influence. Everyone has input on it. For me, it's our coaching staff and our assistants are not employees. It's not a dictatorship. They're all minority owners, right? And I'm just the majority owner of what the final decision will be. But for me, I want to hear everyone's thoughts and ideas and trying to keep it as much systematic as possible. So that way the players have to think less and react more. at that point, I will have prepared an offensive edit of how I want to attack that opponent based off the way that they're playing their pick and roll defense, what their systematic rules are, and what type of cuts and actions we want to use to basically distort or take away where they help from in pick and roll actions. And within the scouting report will be weak defenders that we want to target, players that we want to try to put in specific actions defensively to attack.
I love it. So there's so much in there. Thank you. That's been great. In terms of the offensive, defensive edits and the personnel edits, what amount of time would you say they are in length? And does every player get everything that is sent to the players, or do specific players get more than other players?
So every player gets the same length of edit. As I try to tell our coaching staff, my mentality is a little bit different. I think for us as coaches, and I hear it all the time, players nowadays, they can only watch this many clips. They can only watch this amount of minute of film. They can only do this. And to me, I totally disagree with it. And I think we are doing a disservice to our players by having that mentality. Right?
Coach, can I interrupt you for a second and just give you one of these?
Yeah.
I really think that we sell, I mean, I'm at the college level, so they're student athletes, but I think that we sell them short in terms of what they're capable of doing. I do believe in catering towards like learning styles, but that being said, you don't know what somebody can retain until you try and see what they have.
Sure. I mean, like if you take a wild animal, let's say an alligator or a shark, and you put them in a tank that is small, they will survive, but their growth will be stunted. Players are the same way. If we feed them 5 minutes of film and we tell them this is all they can handle, then yeah, that's all that they can handle, right? But we have to challenge players to not be easy on themselves. And then for us as on the basketball side, we have the mentality that players can't do it, they can't focus. This generation, which doesn't make sense because for football, which is the same exact generation, they watch hours and hours and hours of film. And their preparation is totally different than what it is on basketball. And the reason why is it's demanded from them at a young age. And so by the time they hit college and they hit the professional levels, it's habit. It's normal, for one. And two, like I try to, and it all goes into how we develop our team and what you're looking for in players. For me, one of the most important things is care factors, right? Like if a guy has low care factor, yeah, he's not going to watch film. If a guy has high care factor, he wants to watch it. 1, 2, how can players watch 5 hours straight of Game of Thrones, but they can't watch 5 hours of basketball? It's not impossible. You have to be able to focus, right, when you're watching your favorite TV shows, especially the ones, that are very elaborate. And so for me, I try to challenge our players. And in our preseason meetings, I'll tell them like, okay, hey, we've got a day before a game. What does that day look like? What is your preparation like? Explain to me what you're doing. Because what they will tell you what that day should look like is oftentimes more than what they are actually doing.
Right.
And it is as close to accurate to what they should be doing. Oh, I'm going to watch film to prepare for the game. I'm going to get in the gym and shoot. I'm going to stretch. I'm going to eat this. I'm going to focus on my nutrition. I'm going to see the trainer. And in reality, they don't do that. But if they tell you this is what their preparation is the day before a game, now you have something to hold them accountable to. Hey, these are your words. This is what you said. And for me, I try to guide players to the answers and the mentality that they need to be professional. It's like, how much film do you watch in preparation for a game? Players can say, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. Okay, great. So I can send you a longer edit of personnel and you're going to watch it. Oh yeah, coach, I'm going to watch it. And now they're saying they did. I didn't tell them this is what you have to do. They're telling me this is what they're going to do. And for me, that's how I try to guide players from the very beginning of the season, one. And then two, I try to consistently communicate with them. You think the best defenders in the world are watching a 1 minute clip of the guy that they're going to guard, let
Wow.
alone when they're trying to be evaluated and signed for over $1 million? You think that's what they're doing? That's the preparation. You have a job interview. You're going to go in for your job interview with 10 minutes of preparation for $1 million job when there's 450 jobs available, but there's 1,300 seniors that graduate college every year, let alone any freshmen, sophomores, or juniors and international players. So for me, it's our approach for what we demand and hold them accountable to and inspire them to do, right? We have to inspire them to care more about the scouting report and to care more about video. And so that's what we try to do. Can I say that our guys are perfect? No, no one is. But if we are easy on them, they will be easy on themselves. If we demand more, if our bar is here and their bar is here, yeah, they're not going to get here. That's the reality of it, right? But if we can get them to this level, that's a win. That's
It
a big,
is. It's an improvement.
and the
I
problem
agree.
we have as coaches, right, is it's, as our bar is here and their bar is here and we get them to here, we have the negative outlook of it of like, see, they don't care as much as me. Why do I care more about your career than what you care? Instead of taking the win. Hey, we've got them to raise their bar to this level. Now let's try to inspire them to get here. And we have to think of the mindset of progression over perfection. And if guys are consistently progressing in their preparation and their professionalism and their approach to the game, then that's a win.
That's fantastic, Coach. I'm elated with everything that you just said. We have a question in the chat here from Amando. It says, how does your game preparation scouting schedule look like with a condensed schedule? Do you have a certain buffer of games you and your staff scout ahead of time? So I think Coach actually kind of answered that by saying that it's broken down among his coaches and they're given that early in the season.
They're given it early in the season, and then we try to go 3 games back. But
Right.
even like sometimes coaches have the mentality of going 3 games back. But what I'm more interested in seeing is the roster the same, right? Like, was a guy injured? Is he not injured?
Right.
If
Right.
so, we should go back and evaluate when he wasn't injured. And then 2, who defends them similar to the way that we do, right? Like as we're all evaluating the teams that we do, okay, their systematic defense is similar to ours. Great, I want to see that scout. I want to see how they tried to attack the drop in the pick and roll, how they tried to attack the way that their systematic defense is built because it's similar to ours, and then that's going to give us an idea of what we want to focus on. So I'm less concerned of going back 3 consecutive games, and in a normal season, people try to go back 5 consecutive games. For me, it becomes an efficiency over like just assigning work to assign work.
Right.
Get the job done, do it the best way possible, be as professional as possible. Imagine that you're handing this to Stan Van Gundy.
We have a question from Chris, but just before I get to that, Chris, I'm sorry, I have a question about what Coach Pannone just said. You mentioned the 3 outs or the 5 outs. It's kind of a common theme that I've heard in terms of preparation. And then you spoke a little bit about being more concerned with, I'd like to identify a team that defends them similarly and use those types of clips, or I'd like to see that the roster was the same and approach the matchups based upon like that player was playing in this game, et cetera. How do you store and categorize things from teams that play similar to you? Like if you're in a season similar to this, that's really condensed, it's 25 games over a short period of time, I believe you said. Do you just know certain teams that play similar to you, or I think I know that the answer is that you're always watching film, but like, how do you store all of that stuff, like, hey, they do something very similar to us in the ball screen here, or they have a similar set of guys that would be handling the ball screen, so I'm going to focus more on them? Where do you identify, and how long do you sort those things for?
Yeah, so it's a combination, right? As each coach is assigned teams and scouts, and then obviously the random teams that we happen to be watching or filming, you're getting an idea of who defends similar to us, but then also who is good defensively. So
Right,
the other thing I want is, like, I want to see them against really good defensive teams because maybe they're doing something we should be doing.
right.
So
Is there a metric that you zero in on to identify a good defensive team?
defensive rating typically.
Yeah. So I'm going to get to Chris's question. Do you intentionally assign teams to coaches based upon the stagger in the schedule? So Coach X doesn't get hit with, say, 3 in a row.
Yes, unless two things. One, that it's a back-to-back against the same opponent. I want it to be that same coach.
Right.
And two, let's say it's not a back-to-back, but we play that opponent. So we play them, we have 2 games in between, and then we play them again. Ideally, I try to keep the scout schedule to where the coaches have the same team throughout the season.
Like
So I try to assign it to where it is staggered, but as much as possible assigned by team, to save time, like to be as efficient as possible in what we're doing.
Do you have, I know that you said you have a requirement for when it's delivered to your staff and for when it's delivered to the players. Do you have a requirement for how soon previously they have completed their scout, or as long as they make that deadline for delivery, you're okay with it?
Yeah, as long as they make the deadline, they're okay with it. If they want to have it done, so let's say the team is playing another game or two, but they want to have the majority of the scout done, and they're just monitoring those 2 games to make sure they're not doing anything different. It's no issue for me.
Right. Love it. One more question from the chat. How do you weight in reviewing and tweaking and correcting things from the last game from the viewpoint of self-scouting versus focusing on the next opponent? So, Armando, I'm going to put a pause on that question because I believe it ties in a little bit to the following questions about in-game adjustments and post-game review that are coming up here. So, if you don't mind, I'll just ask to hold off, and if that section doesn't complete what you're looking for, we'll circle back to your question here, if you don't mind. Coach, in-game stuff. I mean, you talked about everything about the process leading up, and you mentioned, wanting it to be as conducive to a system as possible so that, like, guys don't have to think as much and can react more, as you said. When you start getting into games, how do you evaluate that your game plan is correct, and how long are you willing to stick with it if it's not, versus make a huge audible call halfway in type deal?
So one, the question becomes, are the players executing the game plan and the game plan is not working, or are they not executing the game plan? Because if
Right.
not executing the game plan, I'm very vocal about that. We can't say that this isn't working because you're not doing it. Now, if we are doing it and it is not working, we will absolutely change it up. Now, we may go back to that, right? Like, we may have anticipated, okay, this guy is not a great mid-range shooter, so we're going to drop on him in the pick and roll, try to force him into the mid-range shot. Next thing you know, he's banged in 2 or 3 in a row. Okay, now we have to continue to evaluate time clock score, right? Are they beating us? Are we winning? Is it a tight game? Because then we may put them more up to the level of the screen, until he misses a few shots and then go back to dropping on him. So
Right.
our approach is definitely going to be adjust. We're not trying to wait till halftime to adjust. We're trying to adjust as much as we can, as quickly as we can, but without over adjusting and without over coaching.
So I love that. It brings me to a follow-up question, though, of like, with the specific example that you gave, let's say you're being attacked in a drop and then you switch to a different coverage. This, of course, makes me think about the time that is involved in being able to install various different coverages or various different adjustments within a system. So how much do you teach like in training camp? How many various options? I think really what I'm getting at is, do you believe in sort of like the jack of all trades mentality, or do you believe in specialization? And then if you believe in specialization, how much time are you attributing to the things that are not part of your specialty?
So one, a combination. It comes down to your personnel and IQ and feel of the team. Uh,
Right.
what the defensive IQ is specifically. But one, when we start out teaching in training camp, we start out with a harder coverage. So like for us, it was what we call up to touch, which is essentially a flat show.
Right.
So we're going to start out teaching that coverage first because it requires more rotations. It requires a low man being pulled in. What our low man rules are based off Coach Van Gundy.
Right.
Then from there, we're now going to add easier coverages to teach, right? Because a drop in the pick and roll is essentially going to require less players to be involved. You're trying to solve the pick and roll within 2-on-2. Then
Right.
obviously switch in the pick and roll based off personnel. We work on switching and how we want to switch, and then how we want to shrink the floor after a switch, or if we want to trap the post if it's attacked with the post. And then now, when you have those coverages in, a drop in an ice for a big is the same thing.
Right.
There's no difference, right? It's just a guard getting high side and turning it. And ice defense doesn't really exist. It's fake because nobody actually ices the pick and roll the right way. Guards just hear ice, 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 and then they go towards the baseline for some reason instead of using the screen, because no one actually forces anyone to the baseline. It's crazy. So like, as I tell our players, ice defense only exists for us. When we play against it, it's not real. It's fake. So
I've actually heard you say this a few times in pick and roll clinics, and I find it interesting. Could you elaborate on it just a little bit more there, please, if you don't mind? Like,
absolutely, I will. And I can also elaborate by film. I can pull some up.
let me give you the ability to share. Sorry. Sharing options, all participants. You should be good, sir.
Let's see if I can quickly use it. All right, so let's see.
I'm just gonna take a second and promote some of the stuff that you do while you're finding that. For anybody who doesn't know, Coach Pannone has many top reviewed, excellent ball screen coverage type stuff like that are on CoachTube. Like you can find them everywhere on the net. I highly recommend going and purchasing one if you're somebody who likes to self-study and get better at it. His stuff is fantastic. I have a very large collection. So Coach, I'll shamelessly plug you on that. You're an excellent contributor this way for sure.
I appreciate the plug. I just try to steal from everyone. So most of the clips will probably be internationally based in Europe. I don't really remember, but okay, this is a perfect example, right? Like, so they're trying to ice the pick and roll here, okay, as they're doing it. So anytime teams try to ice the pick and roll, if you take a look at, I believe that's Pangos, his top foot is left foot. If his left foot is not above your body, you just use a screen, right? If the first option in a normal pick and roll coverage is to reject the pick and roll, the first option against ice defense is to use the screen, right? So like one, you just use the screen.
Right.
Because very few players are actually forcing you down to the screen, right? So like here, Maccabi Tel Aviv, they're trying to ice the pick and roll. And what happens, look at his body position, right? His top foot is not above yours. So he's not actually forcing you down towards the baseline. But what happens is this. Players here, ice, weak, top side, whatever you want to call it. And they just hear it and they go to the right. They go to the baseline.
The ball handler just accepts what they're trying to do.
Right, exactly. And so using the screen is the very first option because, right, it's same thing. It's like rejecting a pick and roll. Now here, same thing. Look at Pangos. Okay, here he has pretty good position, right? And they try to flip the screen into a step up. He still just comes back and uses it. And the points per possession against an ice or a weak drop significantly once you get to the middle of the floor. So same thing. You can see it in this clip. They're trying to ice it, get there, but the body positioning is off. And very few players have the proper body position when they are trying to ice or weak or pick and roll. We just accept it, we use it. And then two, it gets to pick and roll setups, right? So like now, if you watch Gal Meckel, okay, Partizan here is trying to ice it. So now watch his setup. So if you attack hard to the baseline, okay, so watch. He's gonna, sorry, he just used the screen here. I thought this was, I'll get to the pick and roll setups. Might be in a different clip.
No problem at all.
These will all be just use the screen, right? Like look how far away he is. It's just terrible body positioning. Okay, so now.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I believe the phrase that I had heard you say prior in one of your clinics was that most teams don't plan for failure in their coverage. So if they're trying to ice like what you're showing, and he just uses the screen, the other players are just simply unprepared for that failure among the two players that are trying to ice the ball.
Absolutely, right? If you think about how much time you allot in your pick and roll defense, 95% minimum, more likely 100% is based off the player using the screen.
Right.
Your rotations are less crisp. Your players are less prepared, which is going to obviously generate more fouls, layups, kick out threes, slower rotations, and that way you want to attack it. But it's like one when you're attacking ice defense. Okay, so here these will be like all pick and roll setups because this is really the first part, right? When teams want to ice it, Pangos' position is really good, right? He is actually taking away the middle. Now, right, little jab step, attack, bang. Now he's got to square him back up. Now he's
right.
Screen.
My Canadian guy is getting killed today here. I'm sorry.
Who's that? Pangos?
Yeah, he's his father is actually the former head coach at the school that I used to coach at, York University.
I love Pangos.
Yeah,
I have a whole bunch of positive offensive clips of him, but defense is not a specialty. But same thing here, right? So like watch Maccabi Tel Aviv. I think that's Michael Roll is trying to ice it. Okay. Attack down, make him guard you, come back. You're still getting the ball to the middle of the floor. So now it comes down to your pick and roll setups are a big key in teaching points of your pick and rolls. Okay, here's St. Ross. He's trying to ice. I think that's St. Ross, but same thing. Watch Feldine's setup, right? Like he's going to attack, little hesitation, crossover into the screen, and now you use it. And then the last quick portion I'll get through is let's say they actually play good ice defense. Okay, so now you just want to utilize throwbacks. And so
while you're searching, can I ask you a quick question at the same time? Do you, I know from watching a lot of your clinics, you use a lot of Euro basketball for your film. Do you ever show clips of the way you want to play something, but it's not involving the team that you're about to play? So as a, for instance, this game we're exploring is Delaware, and let's say you want to defend something a particular way, but you could not find a clip where somebody played Delaware in that particular instance. Would you then utilize film from something else that?
Absolutely. I'll look for clips for us first.
Right.
And then but I'm a big believer in giving players the mental picture, right, along with the visual and then the physical.
Right.
So that's absolutely what I will do.
Love it.
So now teams that want to ice, okay, so once again, Maccabi Tel Aviv, this is our team in Jerusalem. Okay, they try to ice it here with Zeusman. Now when you make that pass, right, and you just come, obviously they're opening up to the back door. This is just kind of read by read for the big. Okay, so let me just get it. Okay, here's a good ice by Scotty Wilbekin. Once you make that pass, the natural reaction of the defender is to relax, right? So like now, when he relaxes, it opens up that ice. And this is kind of a teaching tape of how to attack ice. That actually wasn't Scotty Wilbekin. Okay, so Elijah Bryant here, who's now with the Bucks. Same thing. You hit, set him up. Now you're right back to the middle of the floor.
Right.
And so most players are going to relax once you throw it back to the big guy. So hit, chase it. Now you're back to the middle of the floor anyways.
Would you call this action zoom action, basically, the pass and get action?
Yeah, I mean, you can call it zoom, get, chase, whatever your terminology is.
Right.
You know, like same thing. Watch Scotty Wilbekin, who's a great defender. He's aggressive on James Feldine. James Feldine hits Amari. He relaxes for a second. Ball's in the middle of the floor. It's over.
Perfect. I love it, Coach. Thank you for that aside on ice not being there. That's fantastic. It was a great addition that I did not expect, and I'm super happy that that went in. Can I bring it back to the game just a little bit? I got a couple more questions before I get into a little bit of film from there. I think the next one goes from a little bit more general of a perspective to specific of a perspective in terms of preparation. What did you identify that you wanted to do for this particular game, offensively and defensively, for you? Without talking too much about your opponent, what did you think were your advantages, your strengths that you needed to, like Delaware, if I'm not mistaken, I believe was undefeated at this point. And
Correct.
I think it's fair to say that both of your teams were among the most skilled teams in the G League this past season. So what did you think were your advantages that you wanted to attack and defend with?
Well, one, the way that they play their pick and roll defense, they were very aggressive within their pick and rolls. They'll hard show in the pick and roll, and they'll switch in the pick and roll. So our preparation is going to be very much about what floor balances we want to utilize to attack the show in the pick and roll and the switch in the pick and roll, and then what our concept would be to attack the hard show and the switch in the pick and roll. From there, offensively, they are a phenomenal transition team. I mean, they play very fast, not just within transition, but the way that they cut in the half court is excellent. I mean, it's like, you know, when I watch their team play and I'm watching my team play, I'm like, well, why the heck don't we do it like that?
Right.
He did a phenomenal job. And so we were going to have a strong emphasis on getting back in transition, not giving up transition buckets, trying to take that away, in which we were a very good transition defensive team. At the time, we were number one in the league, I believe. And then two was going to be to try to be physical with them, to slow them down in the half court, right? Not relax, because like the way they cut off their chin action is with such great pace. They just steal layups, which they did against us. They got one or two layups off the back screen in their chin action against us. And so for us, it was really try to think about how we're going to guard their specific scoring actions that generate easy buckets, how we wanted to slow them down in transition and within the half court. And then from there, a strong emphasis, because they were one of the best three-point shooting teams, which was one of our non-negotiables, early high-hand contested shots. Like if you don't have an early high-hand contest on their shot, you know, we're looking at it's an automatic sub is what our goal was.
Right. I like that. Do you always contest same side to same side? So like for a right-handed shooter, it's a left-handed contest, or do you?
So there are studies done on that do prove that does yield in a better defensive field goal percentage. But I mean, you like at the G League and at the, you know, I think specifically in the bubble, but at the G League level, like you're not going to be able to get that detailed. Like,
Okay.
First preference, early high hand. What hand it is, don't care about, you know, as much. Now, the early high hand is over, like that's more important to me than which hand is up to contest a shot. And then secondary would be which hand is up to contest a shot. But I think at the G League level, you don't have the time
Right.
to really teach that. And then you have to pick your battles, like what you're going to really fight for as your non-negotiables. And is if you have too many, you're just going to lose the guys.
And chopping of feet, what's your standpoint on that, on the closeout? Has that totally been removed from the pro game at your level, in your opinion?
No, I mean, it just depends on each defensive coach's philosophy and player's philosophy, you know, and in which I'm a little bit more detailed with what would be within Europe. at the college level or the high school level, where you just have more time to really
Right.
break down those details. But at this level, as much as we can, just get it done. And if a guy's just a terrible defender or he's slow, then we're going to give him a preference on what we want.
Right. And then the other one that I would ask you to elaborate on, just because personally I feel of the like I would say that the game breaks down into 4 segments: defense and offense in the half court, defense and offense in transition. And you mentioned defensive transition and what a juggernaut this team actually was in transition. What sort of non-negotiables do you put in? What are the teaching points that you're really, hammering home in terms of defensive transition? And is it really affected by how many you send to the glass, or is it more just sort of like a setup principle?
So one, if you ask any analytics person within the NBA, there is no correlation between offensive rebounding makes you a poor transition defensive team.
Like it.
That is a common misnomer. Now, at the NBA level, the obvious concern is if you are crashing the glass, as Coach Jeff Vizdelik would say, 1 second of delay yields 7 feet of separation. So
Oh,
if you
wow.
crash the glass and you have that second of delay to get back in transition, your guy is going to create 7 feet of separation within that 1 second. So comes down to philosophy. I'm a big believer in crashing the offensive glass, and I am a big believer in what is called tagging up, which is something an Australian coach came up with, Aaron Fern. I'm a big believer of that. I'm a big believer of tagging up would work in the NBA if done properly. I believe the hardest part is to just get your guys to do it and do it consistently,
Right.
physically over an 82-game season. But I mean, if you take a look at the best transition team, right? So this would have been 2 years ago now. So the Milwaukee Bucks were the best transition defensive team in the NBA, and they gave up roughly 11.5 points per game in transition, and they scored roughly 11.5 points per game off offensive rebounds, right? So like if that's what you're comparing it to, they roughly broke even.
Right.
The Denver Nuggets gave up 12.5 points per game in transition, but scored 15.5 points per game off offensive rebounds. So essentially, they were +3, right? So even though Milwaukee had a better transition defense, if that's what you're comparing it to, the Denver Nuggets were +3. And if you can find a way to score 3 additional points over an 82-game season, you're projected to win 9 additional games.
That's remarkable.
But
you just had that off the top of your head, didn't you?
No. I've given clinics on my belief on offensive rebounding, but people think I'm crazy. So
I love it.
I'm a big believer in offensive rebounding. Offensive rebounding is the 3rd highest percentage play in the game. And it doesn't make sense that we put such an emphasis on boxing out if we're not going to crash the glass. Just like conversely at the college level, we can't put such a emphasis on our transition defense if we're not going to attack in transition. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. But you hear coaches all the time, we got to box out, Oh, I'm sending 5 guys back. Well, if it's not that important, why are we focused on boxing out? It doesn't.
Right.
I mean, if it's that important, we should look to use it to our advantage. But that's, there's different techniques you'd have to use at the NBA level comparatively to college because of the speed, athleticism, IQ, and passing ability of the players, which is why I do believe tagging up would work if you could execute it properly.
Right. I love it. Thank you for that. I have 2 more questions before film. I know I said that 1 second ago, but the first one is halftime in this particular game. You're down 12, I believe it is. You had mentioned that you're not waiting. No, excuse me, it was 14. You're not waiting until halftime to make adjustments. So you've been making adjustments throughout the game. What are you saying to your guys in huddles or at the half? What does that process look like for a coach in the G League? And then my other question, I'll just give you both so that you can go into both. But my other question is, after the game, do you do anything that's like a post-game review that you had mentioned, are we executing our game plan? Do you do anything that's like a post-game review that weights, did we execute properly, or was the game plan off in any measure, and like what could we have done better if we face them again type deal?
Yeah, absolutely. For this game, I thought offensively we were playing unselfish. I thought we were doing a good job with how we wanted to attack their hard show and switches and the pick and rolls.
Right.
Um, for me, it was a defensive issue. We'd given up, I think, 65 points, 62 points, something like that. And so defensively, we were getting beat in transition a little bit too much. We were losing sight of shooters. And the pace that they play at within the half court was creating easy bucket opportunities. And so the big focus was remaining positive at halftime. Offensively, I enjoyed the way that we were playing. And it was just we had to take our effort, physicality, and focus level defensively to another level and come out and essentially try to break that lead possession by possession, as all coaches say. There's no 14-point play. We got plenty of time. A 14-point lead in the G League, is nothing.
It's interesting that you say that, because my friend and I were talking last night about the Milwaukee game, and it's just like, do leads even matter at halftime? A lot of the time here, guys are good enough that if you're not aware for every possession, you can really chip away at that and break it down type deal.
So the analytics would say yes, that the lead, that it actually does matter. It matters very much in terms of essentially your goal as a coach, right? And Greg Popovich and Sam Mitchell have roughly the same winning percentage in games decided by 4 points or less. Okay?
Wow.
So essentially, they're a coin flip. Over the course of a career, each season can be different, right?
Right.
Over the course of the career, it's roughly the same. So your goal is to go in towards crunch time, the end of the game, not up by 4 points, right? And what I'm going to tell you, yeah, of course, we want to be up by 30 every game. No, yeah, it's not rocket science. Great. How do you coach your team to accomplish that? What is your mindset to go in not down by 4 points or not up by 4 points, going into more so up by 4 points, going into the end of the game situation? How are you coaching? What are you doing to try to put yourself in position of that? So as the guy by the name of David Thorpe, who I worked with at the Pro Training Center, who's one of the most out-of-the-box, smart basketball minds I've ever been around, best player development guy I've ever seen by far, came up with a theory of, and it's backed up by the data, you want to blow a team out in a single quarter and not get blown out. So for teams that win a single quarter by 10 points or more and do not lose a quarter by 10 points or more, have over a 90% chance of winning the game.
Wow.
So as you're down by 14 at halftime, my very first thought is, how do we chip that lead? How are we chipping away at, what is our coaching philosophy to chip away at that lead? And then try to obviously make a comeback, but with the aggressive mentality as much as possible of, trying to shorten that lead, come into crunch time only down by 4 or less.
Like it. And then the post-game review part of the question, sorry, do you do anything, or are you just too time constrained at this point in the season?
Oh, absolutely not. So TJ Saint will take all the defense. He will have a defensive edit of things that we executed well, didn't execute well. And within that will be points that are on us, whether it was like, hey, this was the game plan, they scored this, that's on us as a coaching staff. Hey, this is our system, and they did a really good job of attacking it. That's our fault. That's not your fault. So it always starts out with what is on us as a coaching staff, what our mistakes were, what we could do better, and then it will flow into the transition of the player. So TJ will take all the defense with clips sent by coaches for who's ever scouted what. was. They'll go
Okay.
back and be like, hey, this is what I saw here, bang, bang, bang. And then they'll go over the same thing. They'll send me offensive clips, and then I will, do the offensive review. But we always do a post-game offense and defensive review before we start our next scout.
And is that only for you guys, or do the players get that as well?
No, we watch that as a team, and then it's, we have different teaching points that we want watched in individual film that, maybe there weren't 4 guys that did this. It was just one guy that repeatedly did it. Hey, make sure that you include him helping off the strong side corner in this film.
Love it. If anybody has any questions, now is a great time to jump in. If not, I'm going to share my screen, and Coach, I'm going to get to the video portion. Let me know if this size is okay for you. And once we start it, let me know if any of the playback is not great or visible for you, of course. I will try my best. As I mentioned, I will play everything 3 times, so bear with me as I fumble through the description of stuff. And then the 3rd time through, or the 2nd time through, if I describe it accurately the first time, is for you just sort of let us know what you see. So the first clip is kind of an easy one. It's their first play of the game. They bring the ball back up to the point and move to the right slot to start running something, little flip action in behind. He drives right to the right elbow, hands off to the corner, and they end up with a top pick and roll that he just shoots over top of.
Yeah, so that's a late high hand contested 3. That's an issue.
So when you're watching this first play of the game, do you my note says, like, are you looking to see what they're like? Do you believe in attacking certain things with your first play? Do you think that they're trying to do the same? Do you kind of identify anything that they're going for there?
I have no idea what they're trying to do, but I do. All of our ATOs are specifically to attack the way that you systematically defend things, what your habits are, or what your personnel is. They're like, it's going to be solely based off that.
Love it. So from this clip, the only thing that you would see would be your closeout, or is there anything in there that you would have like, hey, this is a bit of an eye twitch moment, it's early in game, or, what do you take away from it?
If you rewind it, so go ahead and bring it back from the beginning off the penetration towards the middle. Our nail help was really good by Caleb Holmesley.
Right in here.
Yep, Justin did a good job. Okay, we switched that. We took away the paint, which is our goal, no paint game. Now here on the DHO, this should have been a switch with Caleb. So the player defending, I believe that is Rajon Tucker, should have switched off on that onto Jared Uthoff's man. They didn't. We got lucky. They bobbled it. Otherwise, he's going to be getting downhill and get a layup. Justin Wright Foreman's stunt was perfect. I love the way that he got back out to the shooter. Now on the closeout, it's got to be an early high hand contest. And so this should have been an automatic sub.
First play of the game. Ouch.
Yeah, it should have been. I mean, we either missed it or the ATO that I drew up was specifically for him. So,
We got a question in here. My man, Justin Wright Foreman, LB says. So then your first play, next one, your first half court set. If I remember correctly, my notes just say you're trying to specifically get somebody going at this point. It's a little bit of a chin type action here. So let me fumble through it here. I'll try. There's a wide pin down on the left side of the floor. He comes up and sets a ball screen, basically gets out early like a ghost, and then comes off of what I would call a chin screen at the top and catches a lob for the layup and throws it down with authority. So trying to send a message, trying to get somebody going, trying to attack something specific. Take us through. Tell me what you got in here.
Yeah. So 2 things. One, if you get to, this is what I would call a delay screen, stop it. So if you rewind it a little bit, so one, any guard-to-guard action systematically, most teams are going to switch it, right, if there is contact or no contact. And so
sorry, are we talking about the pin down, or are we talking about up here where you just kind of
so what you're calling a pin down is a delay screen for me, because it's not a shooting action. Like, that's the whole point of this screen. I think that's Michael Frazier, is to get Michael Frazier delayed. So I don't want him attached to Justin Wright Foreman in position for a clean switch on the guard-to-guard pick and roll. I want there to be separation, because now the separation is going to cause indecision defensively, which is going to put him behind and cause a lack of communication, but put him behind on the back screen. So now as he's coming off, but let it play. Jared Uthoff sets a great screen.
Sorry, I have a quick question. Would a delay screen also encompass basically like a RAM screen? Would they be the same thing?
Yeah, what people call a RAM screen, I just call it delay because I want them delayed. I want the defender delayed going into it. So now you can see the separation between Michael Frazier, I believe, and Justin Wright Foreman. So now as Justin Wright Foreman's getting to the point of the screen, he's going to end up slipping out. And that's what we wanted, with the separation between Michael Frazier and then the slip out is going to cause that second of indecision and delay. So now if you let it go, if you remember, how do they defend their pick and rolls? Do you remember?
I don't offhand.
So they're going to hard show, or they're going to switch in the pick and roll. As a result, how does their big need to be positioned against another big? He's got to be tighter, right? He can't be.
Yeah, he's got to be right up if it's a hard show.
Not in a drop, essentially, right? So he can't drop back all the way to the rim. And then if we ran a middle pick and roll, hard show or switch to pick and roll. So now he's in indecision, right? He's kind of in no man's land. So now because we got Frazier miscommunicated, delayed behind the ball, their big guy's got to be tighter to the big. The back screen was going to be open. And we cleared out Caleb Holmesley with a baseline screen.
Like it.
So going into the first play of the game, you can't say that you know, but I told them, I was like, it's going to be open, throw it at the rim. And if it's not open, your read for Cassius Winston was how deep the big was back. If he was deep, it was now going to become a middle pick and pop, because then Omari Spellman would have gotten the middle pick and pop. He's a stretch big. They couldn't now contest the pick and pop.
So basically, at this exact point, he's reading this gentleman on the nail to see how deep he is, whether or not he can throw it.
Yeah.
And what point would it become unacceptable? The bottom of the.
Yeah. So if he's below the dotted lines, essentially near the restricted line, then Omari Spellman was going to come up into a middle pick and pop, which that wing area is cleared out. And so now he's in position to, Omari's a really good stretch big. And so that you have to choose your poison. You can't guard the back screen for the lob and the pick and pop.
Right.
And then the weak side, Caleb Holmesley is running off the screen between Jared Uthoff, right? And so there is no low man to help on the lob.
Right. Beautiful. Like it. This was one that I liked, which is why I threw it in. Again, also in the first quarter, it was a horns type action. And then my note was just like, is this getting into play after the play type stuff, or is this all still scripted? So for anybody who's listening, they enter to the offensive left forward. And then there's, again, a bit of a chin action there. And then they hand off. There's a DHO on the left side of the floor. And they twist the angle of that to turn it into a ball screen, step up angled. And second side attack and a really hard layup on that side. So are we, Coach, once we're getting into second side, are we still in options of this set? And, just sort of walk me through it if you can, please.
We ran, if you let it play, this would be, we essentially had an elbow series. This would have been elbow 43. And so if you rewind it, Jared Uthoff being denied, right? So like now the trigger is essentially Omari Spellman would reverse it to Jared and then set a pin down for Caleb Holmesley. So he should have reversed it to the player at the top of the key if you rewind it.
To which point?
So he should have reversed it, but they're denying it. So Omari Spellman has it, cuts off the back screen. He should be reversing it. They're denying it. Jared tries to cut back door. Now it's going to become a DHO with Caleb Holmesley. They go under, which typically when you go under, you're going to look to automatically rescreen. Now from here, now they're just playing. Now this is Caleb doing a really good job of reading the weak side, pulled in, skipping it to Justin attacking the closeout.
So as they're just playing, do you have a lot of, in the way that you guys train throughout the year, do you have a lot of, I don't know, penetration principles, guidelines that you throw in for them to play within scripted sort of stuff? Like, hey, these are concepts. It's broken down, you're playing basketball, but these are things that you should look for?
Yes, so spacing supersedes everything. Most important, we want to stretch and stress the defense. Then from there, we're essentially trying to create closeouts on the closeout. If it's one-on-one, you have the opportunity to score. If you attract two players to the ball, you have to automatically get off it. And so our mentality like I would ask you, like, attack the score. Coach?
I don't know if it's me or you, but I'm glitching out a bit there. Sorry. I'm going to stop the share. And I'm going to pause the recording for a second. Coach, do I still have you? Are you there?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry. I think I lost you briefly there. I had lost you right at the point where it said our mentality is.
So I have no idea what I said, to be honest. I don't remember.
It's okay.
But essentially, it's spacing supersedes everything. Spacing is number one more important. We're trying to create closeout situations and put the team into rotations. And from there, it comes to mentality. And so any coach on here can answer, and we can make it an open discussion. But typically, when coaches are teaching players to attack the basket or play out of a pick and roll, the first thing that is you have to attack the score. And that's like the common thought, which I hate. I hate that. And the reason why is this: if you are attacking the score, that is of selfish intent. Your intent is selfish. It's about you.
Right.
If you're to create, swinging it to your teammate. And so I don't like anything that has a selfish intent. For me, your intent is everything. What was your intent? And offensively and defensively, what is the intention you have here? If you make a mistake, you make a mistake. But too many times, especially at the G League level in a league where players think they have to score their way out, they're attacking to score and they're driving and drawing two defenders to the ball, and then they try to shoot on two defenders because they're attacking to score, to where our mentality and mantra from the beginning of the season was attack to create. If it's one-on-one and the guy's on your hip, you score it. You have all the right to score it.
Right.
If it's you attract two players to the ball, you've done your job. That's it.
Is that Ryan or is that me?
It's Ryan.
It's Ryan. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. We had a little bit of technical difficulties with the internet there. We're going to move on to the next clip. So I'm going to share my screen again. And give me 1 second here.
We just needed an espresso break,
There you go. Love it. So the next one, let me just get set up. Sorry. This was, I think, the variation of the previous set that you were describing in terms of getting the ball back to the other forward on after the rip screen. Sorry, getting the ball back to the guard after the chin screen in there. So correct me if I'm wrong, but this set I liked turned into a double stagger on one side and then ended up being like one-on-one on the offensive right side. I will fumble through this for anybody who's listening and not watching. Basically looks like a horn set, enters to the left forward. There is a chin screen that turns into a rip screen on the help side of the floor. Guard pops back up and gets in the offensive right slot. And then there is a stagger on the left side of the floor. kind of creating that same delay effect that Coach Pannone was talking about. That player sort of slips out of the screen, and then there's a second stagger on the offensive left side of the floor, and they play through the right side of the floor one-on-one, shoots kind of a running one-hander, and makes it at the right block. So, Coach, talk to me about this. How do you feel about your execution? Did you get what you wanted out of it? And maybe walk us through some options.
Yeah, so if you rewind it, we'll kind of go piece by piece of the set. So first thing that we're looking for here is, once again, because they want to show switch, etc. The bigs are going to be up attached, so we wanted to look for this back screen for a layup or lob, which the guard does a really good job of tracking the cut, which was really good defense by them. So then the next flow of the game is, go ahead, let it play. So there you can see the big is attached. They really tracked the cut, which was very good. Okay, now as Najee's coming off the stagger screen, okay, same thing. They switch out, which, to be fair, I don't remember if they were switching everything at this point, but it was more than likely I wanted to get the guard onto Najee. So Najee's like our best driver with size. So I wanted this guard to guard, pick and roll to try to provoke a switch. And then this is supposed to be an elevator screen for Justin Wright Foreman. So he's supposed to go through the gate, through the elevator, becomes a stagger. And so Tony Carr's read was the following: one, the elevator, and then two, if it is not open because both players defending the screeners in the elevator would be occupied and worried about it, he's going to pitch it right back to Najee for your attack to catch, stampede, whatever you want to call it, action to try to drive it and get on the rim or draw a foul.
Like it. And I don't want to get into a whole mid-range debate type deal, but would you consider this still an at the rim attack, or would this sort of be in the in-between in your breakdown definition?
Yeah, that's more of like what would become a not an at the rim attack. I mean, I think he was trying to draw the foul by jumping off one leg and fading backwards. And our rule is we want to try to fight the urge of settling for mid-range shots unless there's 4 seconds or less or somewhere right around there. Um, I think Najee was trying to get the foul here, but yeah.
Makes a remarkable athletic shot nonetheless.
All exactly how I drew it up.
Perfect. Well done. There's two here that sort of tie into each other. If I'm not mistaken, I believe I've identified a set that they ran, and they do a variation within it. So I would call this like a 4-high setup with an over-under cut type deal. So you could call it an Iverson as well. And when he comes across, the first time they enter to the right forward, they set the back screen there as well, and then pop up for this. Like, they come up the gut for sort of like a diagonal handoff guard forward. The first time,
Asia.
first time it's a pick and pop, and on the pop he attacks downhill, gets himself a left-handed layup, and then the second time, same set if I'm not mistaken. Over under, enter to the forward. There's the back screen. It's just not even really a back screen. It's kind of just for show. Comes on that angled handoff, and then we pick and roll and late pocket drop off there. So walk us through sort of defending this set. You obviously have it from what you've mentioned. How do you feel you did? And let me know in the 2 clips where you want me to go.
Yeah, you could start back from the very first clip to the start of the play. I do not think we did a good job of defending it well. So now as they go the Iverson, okay, throw it in, essentially, all right, I think we're go ahead and rewind it a little bit. So they throw it into the big. I think here, who's ever defending the guard, I can't really see. It looks like Tony Carr maybe is doing a good job of disrupting the screen, which is what we want. Like, he's trying to disrupt the back screen. Yoli Childs is doing a good job of tracking the cut. He's just sitting back in the paint. We were going to let Jamario Jones catch and shoot. We didn't care. So that action is good. What Tony Carr and what Yoli Childs are doing, the ball pressure from Will Magne is good. He's got a hand. He's tracing the ball. So now as Tony Carr comes off it, go ahead, let it go. Bang. That separation into the screen is what we don't want. So if you rewind it right there, like the hesitation that Tony has from disrupting it. And I think what he was trying to get was have Caleb Holmesley switch out. I mean, I think that's why he was delayed, which would have been smart. I mean, based off the positioning, that would have been a high IQ play. Just
So this gentleman right here, switch
right.
out?
Yeah, switch out. So go ahead and let it play. Right. It's like he's already there. So Tony Carr can essentially switch out and
right.
you can take that away. So I think that's what he was trying to do. He was delayed. So now that separation into what becomes a handoff or screen, it's over. You just can't guard that. And then now, okay, early high hand on the pass to the pick and pop, good closeout. I like the contested pass, closeout. He's taken away the drive. And then from there, what we would want is for him to chest him up, right? Like once he reaches the paint, foul with your chest, stop backpedaling.
Right.
And then it's a great move.
And then on the second one where they vary it, does that alter anything for you in terms of the way that you want to play it?
Yeah, I mean, we should have more ball pressure here from Spellman, in which I don't remember. Maybe he was backing up because the big can't shoot, so really just to muck up the paint. Here, this back screen to the outside should be an automatic switch. So our rules is we want to force any rip screen, back screen to the middle and try to muck it up by tracking the cut with Jared Utoff, the player who's pointing in the paint. And if it goes to the outside, it's an automatic switch. So here it looks like they do that. Same thing. Tony Carr is behind, so he should be connected, attached to the shooter essentially, and then playing the pick and roll. Go ahead, let it play now. Okay, what we want here is Omari, the big that's in the drop, has got to have his hands out, taken away, trying to contest that pass. And then it's just a really good play. Jared Utoff is kind of pulled in. He's in between. They make a great play in the end. So, I mean, for me, both of those are the separation by Tony Carr is what hurt us, but they made great plays.
Armando has a question. You deny the back screens by sending the player into the middle?
We try to force all rip screen back screens to the middle towards the help.
Yeah, so right in there. Yeah, this is just a great late pocket pass. Would you ever pull in your tag all the way on this roll, or is it just?
So I mean, Tony should be switching, right? So at this point, like once it breaks right there, Tony Carr should be a late switch. Tony Carr should be cracking down on the big.
Right.
Jared Utoff pulled in a little bit more, but they're such a great 3-point shooting team. Their offense is predicated upon paint touch, kick out three. So Tony Carr should be veer switching onto the big, and then Omari should be talling up, trying to take away the lob pass. Tony Carr is taking away the shovel/pocket pass, cracking down on the big. And then if we were smart enough, okay, Jared Utoff could pull in fully, and then we could just switch everything.
For that veer back switch, is there a point on the floor that you actually want it to happen? What's the teaching trigger for you?
Hash mark inside the free throw line.
Like it.
Yeah, roughly the dotted line. And for me, our rules are the guard calls that switch. On the pop, the big calls the switch. Because the guard knows whether or not he can get back in front. The big doesn't know.
Right.
For the big on the pop, the big knows more than likely better the quality of shooter that he's got to recover to on a closeout. So,
like it. So this one is a bit of a staple on the show that I asked for. It's actually a combined clip of both offense and defense. The first part of it is transition 3, yay or nay for you as a coach. And then the second part of it is defending the empty side ball screen in transition. So they attack, they get to the left block, they get nothing out of it, put the ball back to the point, DHO to the wing, and then it turns basically into an empty side ball screen. And they shoot sort of a floater from the free throw line, which I think I would be okay with. But sort of run us through your teaching points on both of these things. Are you okay with the transition three? And then how do you feel you did in transition out of it defensively?
So for the transition three, I am a fan of transition threes, especially for a shooter of Jared's quality. I don't love how close the defender is to the shot that he's taken.
Right.
But once again, everything comes down to intent. Jared Utoff is not one to hunt shots. Like he's not a selfish player. He was actually one of our best team players and IQ players. So the shot itself, the quality of the shot is not great. The idea of the shot, I like. The intent of the player is innately unselfish, so I'm okay with that. He did a really good job here. Now getting back in transition and containing the dribble. So he didn't maybe not a great shot, maybe not, but Jared Utoff, great shooter. He's doing a good job here of containing the drive on Tucker, who's a really strong rim finisher, paint threat. Does a good job squaring him up, keeping him out of the paint. Okay, now on the kick out, Justin Wright Foreman gets into the body on the empty corner pick and roll. So you can go ahead and get to the point of the pick and roll. Okay, so his connection looks like it's good. We're getting over top. Ideally, the left runway player is pulled in a little bit more towards the nail. But go ahead and let it play. Ideally, Cassius Winston's pulled in a little bit more, which he's trying to. But Justin Wright Foreman has the rear view contest hand up, which I like. Omari Spellman is doing a good job. I would say his position is a little bit pulled too much towards the ball handler, the big that's in the drop. I would like him to kind of shade a little bit more 50-50. TJ Saint and I, we disagree a little bit on that. For the positioning of the big, but he commits a little bit too much to the ball handler for me this early. And what he does a really good job of, though, is not contesting the floater, which big guys have a habit of, right? Like here, contesting the floater and then giving up the offensive rebound to the big. He does a really good job of cracking back on that big and taking him out of the rebounding position. Justin's contest is good. Defensive positioning is good. Guys box out. So overall, it's a good defensive possession for me.
Like it. Going to the transition three part, can anybody shoot them, or is it an earned thing? And what do you have to do to earn it for you?
I do want to add before I forget, Omari Spellman's left hand should be out, taking away the pocket pass at this position. Bang, right there. His left hand should be taking away the pocket. In transition, it comes down to quality of shooter. If you're a total non-shooter, then, yeah, it's not necessarily a great shot. If it's a catch and shoot three, we try to break our threes up into good, neutral, bad. That's a good three for us.
And the other thing that I sort of picked up on, wanted to ask, you mentioned there's a bit of a disagreement in terms of the positioning of the big on the drop. I believe you said you like this sort of 50-50 between the two, whereas TJ likes more of like the commitment towards the guard being more towards the guard.
He'll shade. He wants him to be in a boxer stance,
right?
Like with a little bit more shaded towards the roller, inviting the guard in, and then the late switch, he commits to it. I want him more 50-50 because I want the decision maker and indecision, right? Because like, am I hitting the big? Am I going to score? And then with the intent of everyone teach and attack the score, their mentality is to score anyways. So
interesting. Like it. Thank you. Coach, are you okay on time? We're right at that 90 minutes. By the way,
TJ Saint, shout out. He says hello to everyone.
Hi, TJ. Are you okay on time? I have about 8 more clips. I think it's 9 more clips, actually. Oh. I had asked you for 90 minutes, and we're right at that mark. So is it okay if we go a little bit beyond?
Yep, no problem.
Thank you for that. This is the first play of the second half. It's multiple screens. So there's a slip out, ghost type action, and then a 45 cut and a handoff towards the right side of the floor. And then similar on the opposite side of the floor where there's a 45 cut, but no handoff. There's an attack and a throw behind. And now we get into a top pick and roll that looks like it was originally going towards the double side, but the double side changes. You get a switch on that. And then we go into another pick and roll where you're now attacking what looks like it would be a single side, but your player's pulled in all the way to the block, and he shoots a sit behind three. So talk to me about this. I mean, is it exactly the way you drew it up? Or were
no.
you?
So, I mean, this part is good. The slip is good. Right here, stop. Good. Okay, so now what Just Right Foreman is supposed to do is go into a DHO with the player in the corner. And then Omari Spellman, the big, should be sprinting up into the pick and roll. So, I mean, go ahead and let it play. Bang. So that should be a DHO back to Cassius Winston instead of the throwback. And then Omari should be sprinting up. And then on that, right now, Jared Uthoff is clearing it. He's taken away the elbow help coverage, getting out. So now we have the pick and roll versus switch. And then what we're looking for is essentially trying to get the advance pass, or the reverse pass to a deep seal, right? So like Omari's here, and so we should either be reversing it to Justin Wright Foreman and looking to throw it in, or advance passing it to Caleb Holmesley and throwing it in the paint.
One of these two creating the triangle,
Right.
I assume is what you're saying. Sorry, just because we can't see your cursor, I noticed you were going at it, but I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what you were looking at creating there.
Yeah, ideally, like now as they're switching, that's our, we're trying to get it in that fashion to where it's either a deep catch with the advance pass or the reverse pass or seed pass, whatever you want to call it. And then now here we're bringing a guard to another pick and roll, right? But our spacing is off. Omari should be in the right corner. And then Cassius has got room to work a little bit.
And are you okay with the shot in terms of, I mean,
Yeah.
it looks like, yes, you are?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Cassius Winston's a 40% three-point shooter, really good off the dribble three-point shooter. He's got time, separation. If it was if it was switch aggressively where he's got a guy on him and he's taking that, then no, it's not an ideal shot. But given the separation into the shot, it's good. So, like, conceptually, I really like what we did here, but the execution on it wasn't great.
Next clip is, this is a blow by on the offensive right slot. I think the error in the possession obviously is up top here. I noticed something in this that I thought was a little bit interesting. Didn't really see it done anywhere else. So your low man or your most important guy, whatever you want to call him, is pulled all the way in to help out on this and not your big, which I thought was interesting. But then I found it also interesting that your beaten ball defender was the person who recovered to the closeout. Is that the way that you would typically rotate instead of Xing from the top?
No, so that was just Najee getting beat and then hustling to make a play. Yeah. That's just Najee getting beat, causing chaos, busting out there. Like for us, it's effort over system.
Right.
It's effort over execution. And so, I mean, there Najee gets beat and just hustles and gets out to the corner.
So if it's effort over system, is there anything that you teach your guys in order to realize, hey, we're not rotating in a standard form in this particular possession, or are they just expected to pick up on that with lots of film and being better players?
Given that it doesn't, we were very good defensively until our last 3 games of the season. So like this is not something that happens often. So like we're not gonna, pick it apart as a team because it just doesn't happen enough. And it might be something we show positively, like, hey, Najee gets blown by. The way that we went through this, we didn't execute it perfect, but effort over execution. If you're gonna fuck up with effort.
Right, for sure. Okay, this one is another defensive clip. It's sort of like an Iverson cut type deal again. They enter to that right forward. They come for that same handoff, get downhill on it as you chase over top. And then I think you're basically square at this point. The reason I pulled this, I thought it was a pretty good defensive clip, but then you pull in from the other slot, your nail help, and I'm wondering what you think about this contest based upon everything that's there. I mean,
So
obviously,
one of our halftime adjustments was don't let them in the paint.
right,
Like don't whatever you do, everyone keep them out of the paint. And so we wanted everyone else helping off, forcing them to have non-paint touch kick out threes. Okay, there overall, our effort was excellent. Yeah, that's a really good defensive clip for us.
I love it. And then this is the last before the end of game stuff. You guys have, you twisted to a step up pick and roll and short roll towards the nail, and then they move the ball second side after a late pocket pass, get an open look at it. My note on it was, this is pretty early in the fourth quarter. Had you manipulated the floor to get a shot for this particular person? Is everybody sort of in a design spot, or had you just decided, you want to go step up pick and roll?
So right, and which if you're attacking the hard show, okay, so like if you think about from a tactical standpoint, think about floor balance versus coverage, right? For each pick and roll coverage has a floor balance that is better to attack it with. For me, any flat show, hard show, an angle pick and roll is the best floor balance to attack that coverage with. Okay, so we were simply just running on what would be for us thumb side 15, which is just an angle pick and roll. This would now become slash. And so what Yoli Childs is trying to do, if you rewind it, so like if we had better shooting on the floor, because right now we have essentially a non-shooting lineup, but we have a size lineup, is if we had two shooters, or if we had Najee and another shooter instead of Yoli Childs, we would have cut Najee, the right corner. We would have cut him and drifted 22 down to the corner.
Right.
But out of the two, Najee's a better shooter, so we cut him with the intent of getting on the short roll in the way that you pull it on the weak side and then screen him. You can see Yoli's trying to set that flare to get that open three.
Right. And this pass, I mean, it's kind of like a pocket drop off, but I noticed the same thing, that they're trying to get the flare. Would you have preferred that the first pass goes out to the corner, or?
Yeah, it should have. The play design was for him to skip it to the corner.
Right. And then you mentioned shooting lineups versus non-shooting lineups. Do you confer that with your guys all the time? Like, hey, on this one, you're probably the worst shooter of the two, so we're going to burn you or drift you, or like, do you ever have scenarios where you keep both spread and not cut either of them?
Yeah, if they're shooters. So I have stackable cut calls. So in any pick and roll action, I have 6 to 7 calls I'm going to attach to it. So an example, we have thumb side 15 short, thumb side 15 slides, thumb side 15 clear, thumb side 15 shoulder, thumb side 15 slash, thumb side 15. It's all one play, but those stackable calls at the end is determine who the cutter is. So I'm determining who is cutting and where they are cutting to at one point on the floor to manipulate the floor balance to attack your pick and roll coverage. So what I'm doing is recognizing who's in the game without hurting their feelings, and then I just call the cut set.
That's remarkable. So we move into the end of game stuff. You're up to 43 and a half seconds left. They end up missing a shot, and you guys bust out in transition. My first question was, does a 33 or a 2-for-1, whatever you want to call it, even remotely enter your mind at this point? Where it does. Interesting. Yep. So are you calling something to try and convey that to your guys?
And score it.
No.
Yeah, we're playing right out of transition. Early shot, if you got a good shot, you're taking it.
I love it. So that is something that you will still do end of game scenario. Jimmy is on the call. He had a conversation with me about this recently, and he said that the analytics support that, and I didn't know that at all. So that's very intriguing that you do it as well.
So it depends time clock score, right? Like this is a 1-possession game. So if we're up 5, we're eating clock because they have to foul us.
Right.
Okay. Or they can just let us eat the clock and we could turn it into a possession game and I'll stretch it out. If it's a 2-point game, remember what we talked about, right? End of game situations are a coin flip. We're trying to extend the lead. So now, if there's less than 24 seconds, or if it's not in a position where we can essentially create a 2-for-1, then yeah, we're pulling it out, right? Like if it's 28 seconds, we're going to pull it out essentially and try to work for one shot. Evaluate bleeding the clock essentially to try to win it down, and then run an end of clock, bleed clock action to try to generate the best shot possible. But in a situation with this much time, in transition, we're looking to score first, a high percentage shot. Now, our guys do a really good job of not settling. They really look at it and they see like, hey, we don't have a great shot here in transition. Let me pull it out and we're going to bleed the clock a little bit more. And so I thought that decision was great. What we are doing here right now is not what I would have wanted, but it worked out and we look like a good team.
Love it. So my next question would have been, is this just a little bit of this, like give the ball to your best player and get out of the way type deal? Because it looked like you just kind of go 5 out.
1,000% not. No, I hate that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like this works out well. And like in Cassius Winston, once again, his nature is unselfish, right? So he's not driving to score. If they would have overhelped, like if the low man would have been there early, he would have easily kicked it out, no issue. So I got no problem with that. But not a fan of end of clock ISO situations with no movement. Essentially, whatever you want as a player, right? So like, let's say we have a guy, which for us, we typically in this situation, the ball would be in Jalen Adams' hands. Jalen Adams, we rested him for this game. He's out. He didn't play. So it was a huge win for us without Jalen Adams, who's our best scorer and NBA level guard. So typically the ball would be in Jalen's hands, and I would make a play call to essentially create the same thing, where it is Jalen attacking, getting in the paint, make a play, but we would essentially manipulate their off-ball defenders to take away the help. So instead of just having a guy dribble, isolate, and go, I'm going to create the same isolation just with more movement.
So I was just going to say a fair summary would be that you still believe that the ball should be in your better player's hands, but it should be after some previous motion before, something to move them around so that everybody's not just standing, watching the ball, prepared to help type deal.
Correct.
Awesome. So then they go side out. You guys are up 6. There's 19.1 left. Are there any teaching points that you have? Do you consider fouling? Is there anything that you are looking to do? And this scenario is actually basically replicated twice in this end of game. What are you thinking here?
Yeah. So one, no, we're definitely not considering fouling. Go ahead and rewind it. So one, we put Jared Utoff on the ball because he's tall, long, active, and can defend perimeter players.
Right.
This much time, a lot of teams run sets that go back to the inbounder. So he's not just a stiff big guy, and he's a very, very, very disciplined defender and very good system executor defensively. So we want Jared being active, trying to get a deflection. Okay, so rewind it a little bit more from the beginning. Okay, so here we have the rip screen. And if you remember our rip screen, back screen rules, if it goes to the outside, it's an automatic switch. Okay, so here it goes to the outside. We should have ideally forced it to the middle, so now it becomes a switch. So now we've got Will Magne, our 5-man on. They're big. He's also our 2-way player. in an end-of-game situation. Part of his development is being able to switch in end-of-game situations and help us win a game. Now, our rule in any guard-to-guard pick and roll is square, 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 with a reminder for the guy defending the ball to remain square on the ball. And there is no switch on unless there is contact. And
So there might be something in there about remaining square to the ball, you're saying, right?
square. So now Jared Utoff and Will Magne do an excellent job of not confusing the switch. Okay, we're there. That's perfect. Okay, Jared Utoff is containing the drive, does a really good job trying to sit on Rajon's right hand, force him to counter. Yeah, that's perfect. Great contest. That's great defense.
Love it. And then this is they go down and they make the 2 free throws from that. You guys end up being up 4. I'm assuming it was a timeout advance. And 15.4 seconds. Do you have plays? I mean, yes, you do.
This is not it. That I can tell you. This is terribly executed for what we're supposed to run.
You're just trying to get it in, basically, and then take the foul, I'm assuming?
So Omari Spellman is doing the exact wrong thing, which creates chaos. And so what should be happening is this. Omari should be setting a screen, number 2. He should be screening first for Jared, who's cutting off to the weak side, then should have a secondary screen for Najee Marshall, who's going to the strong side, and then he should be coming up towards half court. I can draw it real quick if you want.
Let me try, Coach. I think we're here, and then
we're no. So I want the screen, the first screen, a little bit between the top of the key and the G, center of the floor.
Right about there?
Little bit more towards the middle of the floor where it says NBA G League, like the center logo.
That G, I'm sorry. They're both G's. I apologize.
Right about there. So Jared's cutting off, going to the weak side, which could yield into he's got the read. He can cut all the way to the basket, right? Or he can obviously cut to the weak side. Then Omari's second screen would be at about the same for Najee Marshall. Najee Marshall's now going towards the strong side.
And I can't even see Najee on my screen.
Najee's in the back left, right there. Yep. So he's going off that screen to the strong side corner. And then we want our fastest guy, best free throw shooter. That's going to be all the way in the back. So now if you Omari would go up literally to the center circle instead of screen, or a little bit above the center circle at about the G League logo. So all the way up to where the G League logo is. Right, and Cassius Winston would be racing off the screen towards the ball side. And then Omari Spellman is sprinting back towards the opposite back court, in which he's the release pass, if none of those are options.
I'm sorry, Spellman was the ball side or the help side, gentlemen? Spellman
is the screener, number 2. He's the one setting all 3 screens.
So then afterwards, he becomes the release back here type deal.
Yeah, a little bit further. Yeah, we're just throwing in the backcourt to him to get fouled.
Perfect. So not what you wanted, obviously, out of it, as you said.
Yeah, we're risking a turnover here by Omari cutting to the hoop. So now this is just chaos.
So chaos being said, you make some great free throws. You end up in the same situation. And again, are the teaching points just basically the same here? Don't foul, don't cause nonsense, don't give them an extra point, and let them get in, contest anything.
Yeah. So right there, that should have been a switch, right? So 11 is a non-shooting big. Will Magne should have been dropped back off the non-shooting big, because if a non-shooting big is in, why is he in?
Right.
Setting screens, or he's getting, he's a screener or a lob threat. So Will Magne should have been dropped back to then switch this. And so we kind of got lucky there.
And then the very last clip, I think, is a bit of a non-clip. At this point, you guys are up 8. There's 10 seconds left. At this point, are you just, are you content in saying you pretty much won the game at this point? Don't foul. Don't be silly.
No.
Love that they're still teaching points. So at this point,
we're being active on the ball. Okay, we got the rip screen. At this point, we're switching everything, and Once again, Jared did an excellent job of not switching the guard to guard. Okay, and then early high hand contest. Definitely don't foul, but we're not giving. I mean, 9 seconds is a lot of. That's a lot of time. You lose that game, you get fired after.
Right. Like it. All I got from the clips, he did end up coming away with the W. He did be the first team to beat Delaware, which is excellent. And I wanted to take a second. If anybody doesn't, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to jump in. If not, I'm going to wind the show down here. I'm going to take a second to say what I pretty much typically always say in closing. Very special thanks to our guest, Coach Pannone, for joining us. Coach, as a personal aside, I'm a fan from afar. Obviously, I'm up here in Canada. We've been very restricted over the past year. So everything that you've contributed to the community, shared, all that kind of stuff, I really I'm just so grateful that you do. Thank you for that. It's really helped get through this time, which has been difficult for sure. And if you want to stick around afterwards, after the recording, some of the guys like to hang around and sometimes have questions that they don't want on camera. If not, don't feel compelled. But thank you so much for your time. I know this was a little bit over the 90 minutes that I asked you for. And to all the coaches that join in, thank you as well. I hope there's value in this for you still. Appreciate you guys tuning in for Run It Back. Thanks again, Coach Ryan Pannone.
Thank you.